when you get a rose, let's say from a big box store or a local nursery, what are you actually getting there?
Many times you're buying a rose that's been grafted. And so there's a rootstock, and then there's the actual plant that you want that's been grafted into the top. And when they graft, it's the rootstock below, and then they're grafting on this plant that is going to grow on top. And the theory is that it's a healthier plant below, and or it's a healthy rootstock, and it's going to push vibrant growth to the top. Now, the downside of that is that that graft union can be weak. And there can be problems with that with either disease or insects, and certainly cold temperatures. That is a spot that if and you have a freeze or a bad winter, that will can freeze and you're going to basically lose your whole plant. Another issue is that the rootstock is extremely vigorous growing, and so you're going to have that rootstock want to overtake the top plant. And so that's why you'll have a yellow or a red rose or a white rose. And over time, you suddenly start get these other roses that seem to show up from the same plant that are kind of a red or a different color. And you think, what's going on? Well, that's the rootstock, and that's growing up on new canes, and it's starting to overtake the top of the plant. Now, they're not inherently terrible. You just need to know that and be ready to keep those pruned back and do some more maintenance. But I think the better way to grow is what we do is we grow roses from cuttings, and we root those cuttings, and then the top of the plant is the same as the bottom of the plant. It's all one piece. There's no grafting, and you get a hardier plant that will last longer over a long period of time. And so you'll have that plant with you for many years in your gardens.
Okay, that makes sense because I was trying to figure out my only experience really with grafted stuff is fruit trees. And I've got 40 or so fruit trees in my house or in my garden. And, the logic there being that you can get the same variety every single time, right? By grafting
Yes.
onto a rootstock. And so I was wondering in the case of roses, how you were achieving that if you weren't grafting it. And it sounds like you can just do a vegetative cutting and propagate from like a cane, perhaps.
Yeah, it's asexual propagation, so it's cuttings off of the original mother
Yeah.
plant, and the genetics
Yeah.
are all the same over time.
How do you do that? Just to take a little bit of a detour, like how do you actually propagate off of a rose cane? Because I would
Yeah.
know, let's say,
Mhm.
I can do it off of a fig, right? And figs actually are a tree that aren't grafted because they're so easy to propagate from cutting.
Mhm.
But if I was to do like a citrus or a stone fruit, the only thing I could think of is maybe doing an air layer, which
Mhm.
has a very long period of time that you
Mhm.
have to work on and maybe a little bit less reliable. Is it similar with roses or is it easier?
It's actually it's easier than that, and you can take
Yeah.
cuttings. You want to take cuttings off a very healthy, vigorous plant that's growing really well in the spring, and you take a cutting, and then you'll stick that cutting into we use a soilless medium, so it's a coconut husk, peat moss, very dry mix, and then over a period of time, that rose will develop roots and then grow into a mature plant. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of our that's a very high level of what we do. It's certainly more involved and it's more technical than
Yeah.
that here at the nursery to make sure everything goes correctly. It's fun. People should try it. I mean, take cuttings off of your roses and try to root them. It's I encourage everyone to do that. So
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I never picked up that I could do that. But now I might actually do it. So when we talk about a grafted rose, is some of the logic behind a graft as well that, let's say, I don't know, pick a variety, a particular beautiful rose, let's say,
mhm.
maybe its rootstock isn't as vigorous, and so you perhaps get a slower growing rose if it comes from own root.
That is true. And some of the varieties, I would say in the 70s and in the 80s, they may have selected some roses for production that were beautiful on the top but weren't very vigorous growers with the full intent that they would then root those, that they would grow those as a grafted variety. And
Right.
so there are some of those around, but we found that almost all, certainly everything we grow, grows really well on its own root. But the downside, and I think this is people don't understand this. An own root rose might take a little bit longer to get started, so it's going to start as a smaller plant when you first get it. So instead of a big thick woody canes that you get from a grafted plant, you're going to get a smaller, uh, but more healthy root system with some smaller canes. But in that first year, you could expect 2 to 3 feet of growth and blooms. And in that second year, and certainly the third year, that plant really starts to come into maturity and you'll start seeing it break out from the base, and you'll see cane break from the bottom, which is all true to form, and you get a much better, well-rounded plant. Sometimes on a grafted plant, so part of it, part of the plant above will die off, and you'll have like a lopsided plant. And it's really hard to get
Mm-hmm.
that corrected. It looks like it's a hockey stick or something sticking out there. But on an own root plant, you're going to get breaks from the base, and it's going to be a much more well-rounded, healthy plant.
Watch the full episode right here and subscribe for more new episodes every single week.